You know, something really fundamental is shifting in the global economy. It's a transformation that's so rapid, so deliberate, it's reshaping everything from supply chains to trade deals. Today, we're going to dive into India's great economic sprint, a story that's all about strategy, ambition, and just astonishing speed.
All right, let's just start with one staggering number: 287 times. That's the growth in India's mobile phone exports since 2014. And no, that is not a typo. It's a huge signal of a manufacturing revolution that's turned one of the world's biggest consumer markets into one of its biggest producers.
And look, this whole manufacturing story, it's not happening in some kind of vacuum. It's getting supercharged by a diplomatic sprint. And the headline act is this massive India-EU free trade agreement. We're talking about a deal covering a quarter of the world's GDP. It's no wonder they're calling it the mother of all deals.
So you have to understand, these headlines and these huge numbers, they aren't just random events. They are the direct result of a very conscious, very strategic pivot away from decades of protectionism and towards a bold new global playbook.
To really get how radical this is, we gotta look back for a second. For decades, India's policy was defined by the license Raj, this incredibly complex web of licenses and regulations that just stifled business and isolated the economy. And it created this, deep suspicion of foreign trade, which was born from a colonial past. The focus was on making things at home instead of winning on the world stage. Well, this new doctrine, strategic internationalism, it just completely flips that script. It sees trade not as a threat, but as a real instrument of national power and a tool for insane growth, all pursued with trusted democratic partners.
Okay, a huge turning point here was back in 2019 when India decided to walk away from that massive China-led trade pact, RCE. Now, a lot of critics at the time said, oh, they're retreating into protectionism again. But the reality was the complete opposite. It was a calculated move to protect its future. See, if they had joined, it would have just opened the floodgates to subsidized Chinese goods, basically threatening to wipe out India's new industries before they even had a chance to stand up. It was a security decision just as much as an economic one.
So, if India said no to that big China-led deal, what did it say yes to? Well, they came up with this really brilliant new strategy, the Double F framework. The logic is actually pretty simple, but it's so powerful. If you want access to India's huge market with a free trade agreement, or FTA, you have to make a binding commitment for foreign direct investment, or FDI. It's like, you want to sell your stuff in our market? Great, but you have to commit to investing and building here too.
And we've seen this in action already. Take the recent deal with the EFTA bloc, countries like Switzerland and Norway. They get market access for their high-value goods. But here's the real game changer. In return, they made a legally binding commitment to invest $100 billion into India and create 1 million jobs. That's how you turn a simple trade deal into a massive engine for national development.
So this whole new way of thinking has just lit a fire under India's manufacturing sector. I mean, we're talking about tangible results on a scale that's honestly hard to wrap your head around. That whole Make in India idea, it's becoming a revolutionary reality right before our eyes.
Okay, let's go back to that mobile phone number for a second, because the transformation is just wild. Think about it. Back in 2014, India was a net importer, basically just a consumer market dominated by brands that, frankly, don't even exist anymore. Fast forward to today, and it's the world's second largest producer and a massive net exporter. Global giants like Apple and Samsung are right at the center of this, and the forecast is just stunning. By 2025, it's projected that 1 in every 4 iPhones sold on the planet will be made in India. That's a seismic shift.
But, this kind of explosive growth, it doesn't just happen by accident, right? So how was this engineered? What was the secret sauce that made all this possible?
Well, the answer is a clever little thing called the PLI, or Production Linked Incentive Scheme. Essentially, the government just says, hey, if you make your stuff here in India and hit your sales targets, we'll give you cash incentives. This directly bridged the cost gap that used to make it cheaper to manufacture in places like China. It just made the math work for these huge global companies.
And the impact wasn't small, it was a total cascade. See, the PLI scheme didn't just bring in the final assembly lines. No, it pulled in the entire supply chain, the companies that make the displays, the batteries, all of it. This created hundreds of thousands of new factory jobs and really cemented India's status as the #1 China Plus One destination for any company looking to de-risk its supply chains.
But here's the thing that makes this whole transformation so resilient. This isn't just a story about exporting stuff to the rest of the world. It's built on this unshakable foundation, a massive, and I mean massive, growing domestic engine.
Just think about this number for a second. 200 million. That's how many people in India have been lifted out of what's called multidimensional poverty in just the last decade. And that doesn't just measure income, it includes access to health, education, the works. So these aren't just people surviving anymore, they are becoming consumers for the first time, buying smartphones, motorcycles, and data plans.
And that's what you're seeing here, that fundamental shift. When you create this huge internal market, it acts like a giant shock absorber. So even if the global economy gets shaky or slows down, you have this incredible force of domestic consumption that just keeps the wheels turning. It provides a stability that economies built only on exports just don't have.
Okay, now here's a really fascinating, kind of counterintuitive point. For years, we've all heard about India's brain drain, right? All the top talent leaving for the US on H-1B visas. But as the US makes those visas harder to get, it's actually become this accidental godsend for India. All that incredible top-tier talent is now staying home, and it's fueling the local startup scene and staffing advanced R&D centers. The classic brain drain is literally turning into a brain gain.
And you know what's driving all this forward? It's this powerful dynamic happening inside the country itself. See, India isn't just one single market. It's a federation of competing states. And states like Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Uttar Pradesh are in this fierce race to the top, battling each other to offer the best policies, the cheapest power, and the fastest approvals to attract that next huge factory. This internal competition is what drives the whole country to get better.
So what's the big payoff here? What happens when you combine this really smart trade policy, a manufacturing revolution, and this powerful domestic engine? Well, what you get is the emergence of a totally new independent power center on the world stage.
A lot of analysts are starting to call India a third pole. Think about what that means. It's a country that can offer the kind of manufacturing scale you need to, say, compete with China, but without all the geopolitical risk that comes with it. And at the same time, it offers the democratic, market-based values of the West, but without their sluggish growth. It's this unique bridge between the developed world and the global South.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that the old metaphor of the slow, dancing Indian elephant, it's just completely obsolete now. All the data, all the deals, the whole strategy, it all points to one undeniable reality. The elephant hasn't just started to dance, it has begun to sprint. And honestly, the rest of the world is just racing to keep up.